We looked at the journey of forgiveness, acknowledging that it is a journey, but it's a journey that is leading somewhere, all right? And so Joseph has instituted all these kinds of, they look almost like tricks along the way, you know, how he's dealing with his brothers and how he accuses them that and accuses them of this. But they've been apart for a very long time. He really doesn't know what's going on in their hearts. And part of his own personal investigation, which is due diligence, he needs to do due diligence to know who are these people, is, for example, he puts their money back and he sees they return the money. So that's a very basic test of honesty. So they probably become honest people. Remember, they sold him for money, okay, into slavery. So materialism had a certain grasp on them, that they were willing to exchange his life for cash, you see. So he needed to know, are you still the same people? So when they pay for the food, they put the money back, then he realizes they brought the money back, because he's choreographing all these things backstage, but they are unaware of what he's doing. He hides a cup inside or something, and to cause them to look like they are at fault and they are accused. And they come and they beg and they say, we haven't done this thing. The last one that he did, he wanted to know whether his brother was still alive, Benjamin, and excuse me, and what was his condition. And so he hides a cup inside he had asked them to go and not to return to him unless they are with his brother. They brought the brother back. He saw the brother is okay, and he was happy about it. Now he wanted to see whether their hearts had changed at a very, very deep level by hiding the cup, the cup that he drinks with, in Benjamin's own sack, and then accusing Benjamin then of, having stolen from him, and therefore he would have to be enslaved. And he wanted to see when the rubber really meets the road, how easily will you give up your younger brother's life so that you can attain your freedom? That was the real test. Because for him, they didn't even give it a second thought. All right? So he wanted to know, have you really changed? So it's part of his due diligence. He hides the cup in Benjamin's sack, and then sends his servants to go and do a search. He starts from the oldest to the youngest, knowing, of course, where the cup is. And when the cup is finally found in Benjamin's sack, the entire party is totally ruined. They have to be ferried back. They had not traveled very far, and to go and face now the Lord of the land, to be questioned about, how can we be treating you so well and you're stealing from my Lord the King? And so this is where the story is. It's highly dramatic, but it reveals the intent of the heart, at least at a human level. So let me catch the story from around Genesis 44. From verse 6, when the servants overtake the party who are headed home to take food to their households in Canaan. When he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. They said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we found in the mouth of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from our Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we also will be my Lord's servants. So he said, let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he sacked, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, what deed is that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whose hand the cup has been found. So immediately there is a change of heart, because he says, our brother is guilty, but we are fine to share his guilt. So we can equally become your servants. In this case, servants is really slaves, okay? To become your slaves. So that already indicates that there's been a change in the heart of the brothers. And Judah here is now speaking for the rest of them. An interesting thing, and I said this begins a kind of a redemption of Judah as an individual. Because the eldest is not speaking. You know, this is Reuben who should be speaking. But he's not the one who's speaking. It is now Judah who has taken over. And earlier on, it is Judah who had given his life to the father. He had told the father, you know, give me Benjamin to go with. You know, I'll personally take responsibility for his safety. And if he's not returned safely, I will bear the guilt before you all my life. And that's an interesting thing for him to have said, you know, that I take full charge and full responsibility. And if he's not returned safely, then I will be guilty before you for the rest of my life. He takes personal responsibility. Here again, we can see the initiative is coming from Judah, and it really shows a conversion of his heart. He who had initially suggested, let's sell this guy for cash, you see. And now the value, of human life has definitely changed in his heart and in his mind. So God has found out our guilt. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. This is the test. Will you take your freedom, or will you indeed batter your own life for your brother's sake? You see, this is the ultimate vicarious act. It's almost like what Christ would do for us in the years to come. You know, there's Barabbas here who should be killed because he's guilty of rebellion, insurrection, and murder under Roman law. But the people shout, and they say, we release Barabbas, crucify the Christ. And there's that interesting exchange of the guilty who should have died and the innocent then who dies in his place. When Judah went up to him and said, then Judah went up to him and said, this is the plea of Judah to Joseph. Oh, my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. Even his approach is highly respectful. He diminishes his own status, and he elevates Joseph's status so that his plea might be heard. So he really means it from deep inside his heart. My Lord asked his servants, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we say to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Okay, so he's really putting things in perspective. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. We say to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. So he recounts very accurately the conversation that had happened earlier. When we went back to your servant, my father, he told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother doesn't go with us, then we will not go down. For if our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down. For we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. So even here, Joseph is learning what was the story behind what happened to him. Because he didn't know this version of what the brothers said to the father. They simply said, he's dead or he's normal. So he didn't know the circumstances. So as Judah recounts this story, he hears now that other side of how the brothers explained to the father his absence, you see. And all this obviously has an effect on him. And he's like, okay, so that's what happened. You went, I'm supposed to have been torn to pieces by some wild animal. Then your servant's father said, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. I mean, this is the reported speech. So he's hearing his father's side of what it would mean to lose Benjamin. Now, therefore, as soon as I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. So this is Judah's pledge to exchange his own freedom and his own life for the safety of his own brother. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord. This is a great exchange. And let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father or come upon my father. And at this point, I think Joseph confirms that the transformation is not only real, it's from the heart and it is permanent. These are not the same people that he's dealing with. It's not the same brothers who sold him into slavery for cash. And at this point, maybe, thinking of who Judah was, he's speaking as a representation of his brother, the offender, And I think I'd like us to seriously consider in your own journey, because we are both the offended and the offenders, of those that we have offended. Think about it. What would it take for you to have this kind of life transformation? A serious reflection of what you did in causing offense. A serious reflection. Not we gloss over. You see, because we are human, if I offend you, if I offended Kelly, I would tend to gloss over the offense. Like, it wasn't that serious. Yeah, I told him off, but he deserved it. I kind of justify it. But if you hear it from his point of view, and hear how wounded he was because of what I did, then you come to appreciate the depth of sin that you had in inflicting that to him. Here in Judah's conversation, you begin to feel that he understands the import of what they did. And now, because he bears this guilt in him, he cannot bear to see it repeated in another brother. And if that is what is going to happen, then let me be the one who absorbs the pain of what is about to happen to him. Almost as a way of, let me suffer this because of what I did in the past. In fact, he sees it as God's way of getting back to him. He says, today the Lord has found out the offense of your servants. He thinks everything is happening because of what they did to Joseph. In fact, in their own private conversations, that's what they're saying. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us. They have reflected on the pain that they have inflicted. And I would request that you yourself in your own journey, because we are the forgiven, but we also, we need to be forgiven for the offenses we've caused. We need to forgive others for the offenses they've caused us. Because it's a two-sided coin. Have you deeply reflected on the people that you have offended or hurt? That temper, you said, I just lose it. Do you know the effect of that losing it? And what it has done, the harm and the fear and the pain that it has inflicted on other individuals, maybe for many years. And now who they should have been has been diminished, has been reduced. They live in a cloud of fear and shame because you have devalued them over the years. Have you reflected on what you have done to the image of God that they bear? And who they have become as a result of your offense? That deep reflection is very helpful on your part. So that when you go to say, please forgive me. You're not being flippant and flimsy and shallow. You have come to understand that what you did was deeply wrong. Because from your perspective as an offender, it's no big deal. Whatever they told me to do didn't make sense. So I didn't do it. I told them off. But in your relationship, this is a person that God has appointed in authority over you, and they are in authority over you to bless you. Never mind that they are Pharaoh. Never mind that you don't share a culture, you don't even share values. The ability and the willingness of Joseph to subject himself to the authority of Potiphar allowed God to be able to work through him to make him a blessing to Potiphar. It's not your business to choreograph who your senior or your authority should be. That's none of your business. God has placed them there for a reason. And he's actually sometimes not interested in that person. He's interested in you. And it is your heart that he's looking for. And so he might even increase the task and the labor and make it difficult so that what is in your heart can come out. And if you willingly submit and joyfully do so, then Potiphar becomes your main vehicle to blessing. And the work and the attitude that you held in Potiphar's house will not be forgotten. It will be remembered that there was a young Hebrew man when we were in jail. Never mind that you were in a lesser place. And these were his abilities. Because even there, you distinguish yourself. The jailer saw how Joseph was. And he put him in authority over the other prisoners and did not concern himself with the matters of jail. He could have been rolling and griping about, I don't deserve to be here. Oh, sijui me, I'm a nice guy, In fact, I was my father's favorite. Ungeona ile koti nilikuwa navaa. I used to wear this coat. That's not important. That is past history. Prove yourself now to be worthy. And God will reach you wherever you are. His hand is not too short to save. And God begins a new work of elevating you. And within a short time, you're dwelling in places of glorious heights that you never dreamed possible. You're making authority and decisions even over Potiphar, who was supposed to be your boss at one time. But you proved yourself faithful. For everybody who works, God never blesses rebellion. He never. Even if you think that your boss is unfair and unjust, pray for those who persecute you, those who despitefully use you. He says that. And for those who have followed those rules, God will find out something else about that person if they are indeed evil or unfair. But the main work he's doing is in your heart. Will you submit to this as my authority? And once your submission and obedience has been made perfect, then God will pick you up and put you exactly where he thinks you should be. And very soon, you're in charge of everything that you were complaining about. Then it's your turn to make things right. Consider deeply the people that you have offended, so that when you go to ask, please forgive me, bear the weight of the offense that has been caused, so that you are sincere, because forgiveness should be sincere and should be from the heart. And once you tell them to forgive you, then know what it is that you are asking for, so that you can appreciate what it will take for them to set you free and the price that they've had to pay of bearing your offense. Judah has reflected, and Judah is not flippant about it. And at this point, he's so willing to cause no offense, he's willing to take offense on behalf of somebody else who has offended. Because as far as they know, now what was Benjamin doing? Why did you steal the cup, by the way? What is this? What is all this? I knew we shouldn't have brought you along. If this guy hadn't, because it must have been very offensive. He never utters a word to Benjamin. You realize that? He doesn't even ask you, what were you thinking? He simply says, the Lord has found out our offense. We are guilty. He takes the guilt of Benjamin because he's unaware of the backstory that the cup was planted. He's come full circle. But he has said to Joseph, there's a bigger picture here. This guy is an offender, but you know what? Just take me instead. Because we need to protect the life of our father. That old man you asked us about, he's real. And his life is closely tied to the life of this one. Please, don't let me see the evil that will come upon my father. Because if this boy does not return, then he is dead. So just have me instead. I have made the pledge even before him. And that willingness to bear the offense of others, to be the one offended rather than the offender, is the actual sign of true transformation before God. And it pleases God. At this point, Joseph can't handle the emotions anymore. It's too much. He has seen the transformation. He has seen the change in his brothers. And there's this flood of emotions and love and maybe even anxiety and confusion. I don't know. But look at what he does. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go from me. Send everyone away." He cried. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. Here's another very key principle of forgiveness. Forgiveness should be private. Okay? It should be done with the people and hopefully within the same environment as possible as when the offense was committed. You see, when they threw him into the pit and sold him, there was nobody present. They were out there in the jungle, in the wilderness, grazing the animals. And it's just the brothers that were there and him. So at this point, he sends everyone else away so that the reconciliation can happen in the same context as the offense. Nobody else needs to be there. Nobody else was involved. Nobody else should know. And it's interesting that up to this point, Joseph, despite what he went through, has been able to safeguard the integrity of his brothers. Okay? Because when he first recognized them, he was in power. Now he would have called everybody and told them, "You remember the guys I told you? These are the ones. Kwanzaa, that one. You see that one? That one is the one who took the money. The other one wanted to kill me. That's the firstborn." He never did that. He never did that. These are family affairs. And they are to be dealt with before God. And if you take them outside the circles of where they're supposed to be handled, then you show that you have no faith in God to restore. And you're gathering yourself other people who are innocent and traumatizing them because they said, "Hiya, such a thing can be." You are sold by those guys. Who people can be so evil? My goodness. So those people even lose faith in humanity. And then they start looking for parallels in their own families. Kwanzaa, me, there is a brother. I think that one can even sell me. He's never been sold. The conversation has never been had. But now they are projecting. Hey, that one, the way I see him, that one can even kill me. So what you're doing is imputing motives, traumatizing other people that are not part of the story, and taking it outside the context that is relevant. Our stories are also sacred stories. They should be shared with God because only God has the capacity to handle them and to understand them and also to restore us and to heal us. Most of the people that we tell those things, they're not helpful. They tell you other horror stories. Ladies, I have to say this. You have a knack for this. You really like the horror stories. And you gather with each other. And you say, "Kwanzaa, wacha nikwambie, I had this one." Yeah? This one was not even like, this one was even worse. And you traumatize each other. And you are fearful. I said very early in the series that ladies have a knack for stories that are not helpful. All right? It is true. It is true. And you need to watch when the conversations now take a downturn and they are no longer edifying, they are no longer even edifying you or helping you or strengthening your faith in God or your view in God. Because many times we glorify the enemy by exaggerating the amount of evil and extrapolating it to 1,000 different scenarios that haven't happened, but could happen. But if you hear these things, then the rightful response is to say, that happened, okay, I'm really sorry that happened, let's pray. And you commit those things back to God. And you pray for that person who was harmed or traumatized and ask that God would arrest the evil and limit the effects of it so that this doesn't have to happen in any other context. That's a useful conversation. And when you leave the meeting, if you leave fearful, then you have not glorified God. But if you live with the confidence that even that evil can be arrested and contained because God has the enemy on a leash, then you know that you are walking in the paths of righteousness. Be careful. Be careful. So forgiveness should be private. And he sends everybody else away. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. So you can see the pent-up emotions of these many years just welling up to a big explosion. He cries out, and we said he had thought he's okay, but there's so much that has happened to him. There's so much emotions that has made the Joseph, the great leader that he is, that now stands in the presence of his family members and suddenly, even the freshness of the harm that he has found, that he suffered under their hands, but also the grace of God that has worked in these formerly very evil men to now become gracious and vicarious in terms of their ability and willingness to give of their own lives to save one of them. And finally, he's looking at a family and he's amazed, my goodness, is this my family? And he desires them now. He desires to now come back and be part of them because of the years of loneliness and the years that he has spent in tears. He wept loud so that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. That is a shock. I am Joseph. Okay, how? Why? Why are you Joseph? Maybe that's what they should want to ask. Because he's now in power, he's in authority. And how did he survive? There are so many questions. But he discloses, but the emotions are already telling. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. So he wants the fellowship that he has missed for these many years. And they came near. But of course they are fearful. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, who you sold into Egypt. So he wants them to know which Joseph is referring to. So again, forgiveness must be based on truth. So we are not hiding this thing. You did sell me into Egypt, and I'm that same person. And they will begin to see the grace of God in a different view and in a different dimension. And now, immediately, because forgiveness also must be quick once you make the decision. Don't keep people hamstringed, pending, not knowing how you will decide. Up to this time, they don't know it's him. All right? So there's no issue of they don't know that forgiveness has taken long. The minute they know it's Joseph, he wants them to be free. He wants to tell them, hey, I'm okay. All right? I don't condemn you. We are fine. And immediately he sets off on a statement. I'm your brother Joseph, whom you sold into. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. So the immediate thing he does is to give them a God perspective, that there is another picture. There's a bigger story. It wasn't just about you and your greed, which you did. You did this evil thing. But God was in the story. And when you bring God into the story, immediately, it's like scales fall from our eyes, and we start seeing our small individual actions in the context of a great and a transcendent God who oversees our actions and who is not limited even by our sin. You see, God is able to redeem even our sin, and turn it into something glorious. He says this, and now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So he tells them, guys, you're also in the story. And though you did something evil, God actually sent me ahead. He used that to send me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant. That's why I'm here. In other words, I'm here also for you. And that is the amazing, abundant grace of God. That even for these evil brothers, in that act, God thought about them. There is coming a famine. And you know what? This guy you want to kill, guess who it is that will cause you to survive? I'll send him ahead, I'll preserve his life, and it is from him that your own households will feed. That's the grace of God. Even as Jesus hung on the cross, as he bled to death, I can imagine he was looking and telling the Jews, actually, though you have done this great evil, this blood that you've shed is actually for you. This is the only way that you get forgiveness from my Father. This is the only way you join my family, though you're evil, and what you've done was not coming from a good place. And that's why he says, forgive them. They really don't know. They cannot grasp the extent of their actions and the reach of this forgiveness. So then, he continues to tell them, and God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not for you, it was not you who sent me here. All right? So this is the transcendent hand of God. But it was God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and the Lord of all his house. So it's interesting again. Just as Potiphar had made him Lord over his house, now Pharaoh, in relinquishing the land of Egypt to the rule of Joseph, also put his own household under Joseph. That's how faithful a steward he was. And Lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. Everything, So again, Joseph is not struggling with forgiveness. The heart is wide open. He says, you, your children, everything that you possess, instead of punishment, I am blessing you. I'm giving you the best of the land of Egypt. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is I who is speaking to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt. I think he's remembering the dreams. And telling the father, you remember what I told you? God has brought it to pass. Sun and moon bowing before me, all the glory, it has happened. I'm now Lord. Yeah? So, of all the honor that has come to me in Egypt and all that you have seen, hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. So you can see the completion of the forgiveness journey. It's been a process, but there's an outpouring of emotions. There's genuineness coming from the heart. There is weeping, there is crying, they are hugging, they are kissing, and they cannot believe that God has brought this to pass. And you see, this is really the power of forgiveness, that our stories can end well. That we don't have to dwell in hostility. That we don't have to settle for less than what God has. A story couldn't have been more disastrous than this. Here, you could have said, there's no redemption. Really. The guy's been sold into slavery. It is in Egypt. You know, Egypt is a pagan land. There is no God there, quote unquote, in the God that we know. What are the chances of survival? But this is God's commitment to family. This is God's commitment to reconciliation. This is how God breaks hostility between humanity. Because that's Satan who brings that. He would like us to remain estranged. He'd like us to remain hostile. He'd like us to remain angry and unforgiving. But God goes out of his way to weave an unlikely, improbable, impossible story and scenario just so that we can walk back to each other. And once again, we can embrace and hug and cry and say, I'm sorry. Consider the beauty of this sin and how unlikely it is. So that if you're tempted in your heart to become proud, know that because of this is worthy. The little humiliation you're afraid of suffering by going and asking for forgiveness or by becoming humble. Consider words of people like Judah. Oh, you said, your servant, you did this. Oh, my Lord. This is how he's prostrating himself. But look at the results of it. Judah, because he goes out on, so to speak, on a wing and a prayer, not knowing how this thing will end, but he's ready to humiliate himself and humble himself, and is ready to exchange his own life. His redemption as a man becomes complete. And we know, for some reason, it is not the household of Joseph that will give birth to Messiah. It's actually the household of Judah. The guy who literally sold his brother for gold and silver. And now we speak about the Lion from the tribe of Judah. This is the guy. And this is the grace of God that becomes available to a man, a woman, who is willing to sacrifice and to humble themselves and to ask for forgiveness